Good morning and welcome again. The text we want to have a look at today is still with Luke. It's Luke 14:12-14, a very short text. And Jesus in the house of a Pharisee for a lunch or a dinner. And we don't know why he invited Jesus. Was it curiosity? Was it out of respect? We don't know. But he accepted him to share table. And that was a significant thing. And while they're at table, Jesus says to the Pharisee, look, next time you have a dinner or a lunch, don't invite your family or your wealthy friends or your influential neighbours, because they can all repay you and invite you in return. But rather, next time you throw a party, invite the poor, the crippled, the lame, the blind, because they can't repay you, but you will have a great reward in heaven. And it reminded me immediately of several of the sayings of Jesus. I'm not quite sure why, but they came to mind. Love your enemies, do good to those who persecute you, and pray for those who do you harm. Or likewise, if someone asks you to go a mile, go an extra mile. Or if someone asks you for some clothing, give him also your cloak. It's this acceptance of the other, this going this extra mile without expecting reward or repayment. And I was thinking of Jesus' own experience, the number of times, the number of types of people that Jesus shared table with. Because sharing table in the Jewish context is very significant. You only share table with those whom you respect, whom you accept, or with whom you are friends. You don't share table with just anyone. And what Jesus is asking the Pharisee to do here is to accept, to respect those who are publicly considered to be sinners. Because the poor had to do a lot of the unseemly work. The lame, the crippled, the blind were so frequently considered to be such because of their sins or the sins of their ancestors. And so they were considered to be less desirable. And yet if we look at Jesus' experience, with whom did Jesus share table? Fishermen, Pharisees, tax collectors, and zealots. And the one that comes to my mind, of course, is when Jesus called Matthew to be one of his disciples. And Matthew offered a dinner in his house that night. And so his friends were there. Most of them will be tax collectors. And Jesus, of course, included his disciples, amongst whom was at least one zealot. And the zealots were nationalist terrorists. And I just a bit love to have watched the dynamics in the meal when the two groups would be there sharing table with Jesus. The looks, the feelings, the gestures would have been rich. But he brought them together. And we know in his group of disciples, there was Matthew and there was Simon. And they obviously managed to get along. Table fellowship healed them, at least healed something of their hatred. And another lovely one was when Jesus was in the house of Simon the Pharisee, and they were all reclined at table, and in comes a lady with long hair and perfume, and she plonks herself down at Jesus' feet and weeps. and she washes his feet with her tears, and she dries them with her long hair, and then she anoints them with the ointment she has. And Jesus accepts her, defends her in front of Simon the Pharisee. And so what Jesus is doing in this parable, I think, is inviting us to accept those who may be considered public sinners. And when I think of Aussie, where I am at the moment, I think of refugees. Refugees who've come into this country on a boat, shipped, flown over to Nauru, away from here, in horrible conditions. Through no fault of their own, they were fleeing persecution, death threats, starvation, etc., and trying to give something of a future to their kids and to themselves. But they committed the big sin of coming by boat. And as you well know, they are not invited to our table. Now, I don't know what it's like for you people in the Philippines or England or Korea or South America. You probably have different sinners, public sinners, who are not invited to your table. But the invitation that Jesus, or the offer, the request that Jesus makes is, invite those who are considered public sinners to your table. In other words, accept them as people, because they also are sons and daughters of God, just like you and me. Okay? Have a great week. Hopefully we'll see you next week as well. God bless. See you then.